Welcome back to the Ramses RunDown. I am the Miasma Zakk Ramses, and this gives us the opportunity for you to go inside the mind of the miasma and kind of see what makes me tick culturally here. And we have my friend Justin today, and we're going to talk a little bit about Quentin Tarantino. Justin and I are big enough film people here that we're going to try to pick our three favorite Tarantino films individually and then make a cumulative list of three, which
a lot harder than it sounds.
Yes, it is, and I'm still not even sure which three I'm about to say, but we're going to kind of find out as we go here.
Well,
So
if you want, I can kick off so that you have a second to think.
go for it. You go for number three.
All right, so all three?
No, just your number
the
three
third.
first.
Okay. So this is obviously the hardest spot because you know what your favorite is, but to have to leave the other ones out is hard. I'm going to go with actually the most recent one that I've been exposed to, which is Inglourious Basterds, which I watched with you.
Yes.
Pandemic people will know. Netflix party of all things.
That's true, actually.
It was really, I mean, again, I'd heard for a long time this was a movie I had to see. Absolutely right. Freaking Christoph Waltz is one of the greatest villains I've ever seen on screen. The entire interrogation scene, and then the kind of following scene where he's reunited with the woman from that scene later on in that restaurant. Like, his presence is insane. And not to spoil the movie, obviously, go see it if you haven't. But like the overall arc and the way that it ends for him is just, I don't know, it's poetic.
Good.
Not to say that he makes the movie, the rest of the movie's great, good humor, great cinematography. Quentin Tarantino's dialogue is the best. But please, if nothing else, go see this movie because Christoph Waltz's performance is one of the best I've ever seen.
It's absolutely. I'm not going to disagree. And so I was going to have Inglourious Basterds on my list, so I'll just kind of put that at number three for the sake of it and kind of piggyback off you there. Obviously, it's brilliant. And yeah. Christoph Waltz is fantastic, but again, the cast through and through is so great. And even smaller roles like, BJ Novak, who, known for The Office, does a fantastic job in there. Brad Pitt, who, has some of his best work in the last 20 years, courtesy of Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as well. He shines here. It's really, you go down the list and everyone's brilliant. Michael Fassbender, et cetera. So it's awesome stuff. And yet, to me, one of my favorite scenes in film of all time is that at the beginning of the movie when Hans Landa is interrogating that man inside his home there, and the family's underneath the floorboards, and just the menacing way that everything is so calculatedly broken down from Christoph Waltz in the scene. The delivery of his dialogue there, and the shots that are utilized from Tarantino, it's masterwork. And so obviously that'll be a cumulative one that we definitely both have.
Like, name a more enjoyable movie about such a dark subject matter. You know what I mean? It's just something only he can do.
We'll talk probably about one or two here. So
yeah,
what's your number two then?
So my number two, Quentin Tarantino is no stranger, especially in all these films that we probably will talk about at least, in giving the lead to somebody, be it an underrepresented in some way, shape, or form, be it a woman or a person of color. And I think that one of the best female leads in cinema, yet again, best ever, not to be hyperbolic, but yeah, Uma Thurman as the bride in Kill Bills Part 1 and 2.
No, you're doing the double.
Well, the thing is, right, if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with one.
Okay.
I think that establishes her very well.
Okay.
I'm not as well versed in the second film as well, so I'll admit that.
Yep.
If you were lucky enough to see the whole bloody affair, maybe
Awesome.
You're somebody who got to put that as your, number two, but I was not that lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah, great movie. Stylistically, it's just one of his more, just out there. I feel as though, Quentin Tarantino really, at that point was so established that he could do whatever he wanted, and he did. And Uma Thurman as just he'd done it with Jackie Brown, and she is also a fantastic lead female.
Yep.
I think that Uma Thurman's The Bride, though, is, just iconic in every way.
Yeah, listen, you definitely won't hear me argue against that. And again, to me, some of the most fun action you see in a modern American film comes from Kill Bill Volume 1 specifically, where it's so campy, and obviously Tarantino pulls from so many different influences. But you don't see that in a big budget American film. I think just the types of influences that he brought to the wide blockbuster culture of U.S. cinema in the early 2000s through that, I thought was so awesome. But I was going to put that in my top three, but I'm going to put Reservoir Dogs as my number two.
Great.
And for me, again, there's a lot of commonalities are amongst dialogue and the action, the gore, the cinematography. Those are things you can really say about the majority of Tarantino films as being strong points. To me, one of the reasons that Reservoir Dogs is so great is first of all, I think that the runtime is such a strength to me, where it's a short film, and a lot of his films are long. That's not a knock, because I don't have a problem with long films. Lawrence of Arabia is one of my favorite movies of all time. Length isn't an issue there.
That's how you use it,
One could argue. But to that point, it's, I think the effectiveness and how quick that film is, and kind of how you get into it and you go, I think that's a very an underrated strong point of the film. Harvey Keitel is so great. Steve Buscemi, just an underrated guy in general. When you talk about great actors of the last 30 years, he gets lost in the Adam Sandler shuffle at times, but he really is fantastic. Michael Madsen, Tim Roth, etc. It really is, as far as the characters who take the most amount of screen time, it might be one of the best overall cast performances, I think, of his career, you could argue. Just because everyone shines, pink, yellow, white, whatever color their title was in the movie. Everyone shines, and they're given opportunities there, and it's so awesome. I could go on and on, but that's gonna be my number 2 there.
And that's a brilliant number 2 to have.
Number 1?
Yeah, I saved the best for last, obviously. For me, though, this is a bit of a personal pick. I understand it's not a popular opinion.
We're going the same route.
Hateful Eight is one of my all-time favorite movies. It helps that I went to the Roadshow. It helps that it's one of the first, as a younger person, it's one of the first Tarantino movies I actually got to see in cinema. But yeah, it's just a brilliant film. You talk about the cast. At this point in the game, Quentin Tarantino has found who works for him, who he works best with, and Sam Jackson, Michael Madsen, Christoph Waltz, amongst other new faces, like Daisy Domergue was played by a woman who I'm struggling to remember her name right now, but she brilliant performance. Like, he brings the best, or should I say the worst, out of these people, because they're all terrible. And watching this film unfold with all of these just shady characters stuck in the same place for X amount of days, it is one of those, like, you're on your seat the whole time, you're laughing the whole time. Talk about the action. There's not much of it in the way of, like, a Kill Bill, but every single scene and every single shot has meaning, and some of it gets a little gratuitous at the end. But again, when you really hate these people for the 2 hours and plus that you're going through it, 3 hours if you watch the Netflix special, like, you want these people to find that gratuitous end.
Yes,
absolutely. And again, you have the staple of, like, the time jumping around, and it is just a phenomenal film. It is it's absolutely incredible. So I'll stop.
Jennifer Jason Leigh, by the way, is.
Jennifer Jason.
I was gonna say it, but I wanted to double down check, because as just referenced, I also went to the Roadshow, which, for those who are unaware, was a special set of viewings that Tarantino set up in select theaters, where the film was shown on glorious 70mm film, and it was an extended version where you had the intermission in the middle. It was, again, if you're a Tarantino fan, if you were a fan of the film, you were in your glory, and as I was there. Which is why it's also my number 1. I know there's people who are going to be like, where's Pulp Fiction? How do you not have that on there? And listen, it's brilliant also. As we said, this is a very tough call to make. But that said, The Hateful Eight to me it's again, if you're a Tarantino fan, it's a who's who of Tarantino actors. But again, Sam Jackson, Michael Madsen, Walton Goggins, Tim Roth. It's just, you bring back all these guys who were staples in his films in the past, and they come back here for a seminal ensemble performance, which is really what this is. This could have been a stage show as easily as it was a film. You just have these guys on stage the entire time, just in front of you in person. But instead, you get the beautiful eye of Quentin Tarantino following them, and it's just miraculous. Again, to me, Samuel Jackson, Walton Goggins, those are the stars of the movie there. And again, the dialogue. If you're a fan of dialogue in film and just witty, intense, beautifully written dialogue, this movie is 3.5 hours of fantastic dialogue. And so I could go on and on about how awesome it is. Unfortunately, Justin and I both had the opportunity to see this in 2015.
I would just like to add one thing.
Yeah.
I mistakenly, in my passion, said Christoph Waltz when I in fact meant Tim Roth. I apologize.
Yes. That said, so we know that for our cumulative top 3 here, we're definitely going to have Hateful Eight and we're going to have Inglourious Basterds. We have that coming out.
100%.
So it's picking a third here. Obviously, you pick Kill Bill. There's times where I've said Kill Bill is my favorite Tarantino film of all time, so I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I'm going to say, for a top 3 here, that even though I didn't have it on my list, I'm going to put Pulp Fiction out there just for the sake of it, because that, as much as I love many of his films, obviously I love Reservoir Dogs, and I put that at my number 2. I feel like to round out that list, Kill Bill is a great early 2000s pick. Hateful Eight is a great 2010s on pick here. To represent the 90s, I feel like Pulp Fiction would be a great pick.
You know, I mean, you literally can't convince me that any of these movies don't deserve to be in there.
Of course.
If you wanted to throw Pulp Fiction in there, while I do agree it wasn't either of our personal lists,
Yeah.
if you are talking about the top 3, we already said people would freak out, because that is just like one of those objective almost things. Like,
It's
Pulp Fiction was this monumental. Everybody's heard of it, at least seen it.
It changed the cinema game in America in the mid 90s.
And not to mention, it set up everything that we love about Hateful Eight, about Inglourious Basterds, about any film that came after. Pulp Fiction, really was like kind of the beginning of like his auteurship. Like, he just kind of found himself as a filmmaker and just went balls to the wall. So I have no problem with putting that in that list.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to do Hateful Eight number 1?
I think we both got to put
Two?
Hateful Eight for number 1, because obviously, and then I'm okay with
Inglourious Basterds 2, Pulp Fiction 3. All right, there you got it. Hateful Eight, Inglourious Basterds, Pulp Fiction. And again, a lot of great options left on the table. We didn't even talk about the Django's and
honorable mentions to everything else he's ever made except for Death Proof.
Yeah. So that said, you heard it here. That's our thoughts on some Quentin Tarantino. If you enjoyed that, hit subscribe, hit like on the video. You'll get to hear more about what makes Zakk Ramses happy and not as we release more of these here. We'll certainly at some point, I'm sure, speak more about Quentin Tarantino and film in general. Justin, thanks for joining me. That said, stay tuned, and you heard it from the Miasma.